Welcome back to the garden. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the garden question and answer video that I do most Sundays and have for several years now. You can ask gardening questions down below this video and I pick from those each week to answer. Always great questions coming in. The last two question and answer videos, I was actually out of the country in Europe, and so I got to go back. I've gone back and selected questions from both of those videos, but there were a ton between the two videos, so definitely not answering them all. But I thank you guys for your participation. Questions are always great. If you're looking for Holly in the video, it has rained basically all day out here and it's really, really wet. So I've got her up here on the porch and she's not all that happy with me as she's staring at me right now up on the porch. While I was gone, the channel hit 200,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for that. It's about 6 years in the making, and I thought about mentioning it in the second Q&A that I recorded before I left, but I didn't know if it would hit quite there, and it did many days before that. So I haven't said thank you in one of the videos, so I really do appreciate all of your participation in the channel, including asking questions on this Q&A video, because this video doesn't work without it. Again, I was in Europe for about 9 days with my son. We went to Denmark, over to Sweden, and then down into Germany, to a couple of cities. He's working in Germany for a year. It's been a few months since I've seen him. Took a lot of photos over there, and we went to several botanic gardens, but I didn't film anything. I didn't want to take that time away from hanging out with my kid, 25-year-old kid, during that period of time. The Learn to Garden video series, which is linked over on my website, HortTube.com. There's a discount code down below it if you're interested in signing up for the Learn to Garden video series. I don't know how many videos I'm up to now, but it's a lot, and it's going to be another 45 hours or so of content coming for that series over the next. It'll probably take me another year to get all the videos up that are going to go on that series of videos. The one that went up this week is on pollinators, and more specifically, some of the plants that are in this garden specifically for overwintering of some of the or plants that where eggs can be laid on them and larvae can eat them, that kind of thing. So they're the host plants for some of our native moths, bees, that kind of thing. So that's what that video was about this week. And so thank you guys who have signed up for that. I really appreciate it. It's a one-time fee and you'll continue to get all the videos I continue to put up on it forever. Okay. Let's see, I think that's everything. Let's jump into some questions. Somebody asked me what the fluffy little blue plant next to the porch is over here. I guess they saw it in one of the videos. It's a dwarf blue spruce, and here in my area in Raleigh, North Carolina, we don't see a lot of blue spruces. There are ones here or there, but for the most part, the heat, they don't like the heat all that much. So this one is in a space that space is a little moist, and it's only getting about 2, maybe 3 hours of direct sun. The rest of the time it's in shade, but it's bright shade. It's not like in deep shade or anything like that. Otherwise it wouldn't have that blue color. So there's a delicate balance there where you've got to protect it some, but don't give it so much shade that it won't color up. But that's what that is a dwarf blue spruce, and it's quite happy. So I'm happy about that. I did find a spot, and it's the first spot. Sometimes you'll plant something like that is either not tolerant of heat or not tolerant of cold, and you may have to move them around a couple times to find the spot, but that one hit the ground running. So happy about that. Okay. Somebody said their potatoes in their grow bags are yellowing already. I don't know if you can see those black bags in front of the shop back there. I've got 7 large grow bags of potatoes back there. Mine are still green and growing quite well. We've been cool. We've had a couple days that were in the upper 80s, but overall, I think especially our nighttime temperatures are below average. We have lots of nights still in the 50s, which for some folks in the Northeast that I know just got a frost sounds delightful, but where it's a little low for us. So my potatoes have continued to grow. Generally, if they're yellowing and the foliage is starting to fade already, that's usually the end of their growth. For the season, for this round, for this part of the year, and that foliage is going to die back, and then after it's completely died back, you can harvest your potatoes. Last year, I didn't go much beyond this. As you're watching this, it's going to be May, I don't know what day it is, 18th or something. I didn't go much beyond this before mine started just getting crispy and heading back toward the container, and I had to flip them over, and I had the worst potato crop I'd had in 3 or 4 years. But this year it looks like they're just going to keep going for a while. So that's actually what's happening in all likelihood. That can also be triggered by keeping them too dry. And so I do check on those pretty frequently. Once the foliage gets up this tall and mine are flowering, once they're doing all that, they can really use a lot of water. Plus that bag has water going out of it in every direction. You know, the plants are using it, the sides are porous, so water can get out in a lot of different ways. And so make sure you're watering them enough because once they dry out, they'll also potentially go ahead and go dormant through their summer dormancy. But I'll flip those over in a video sometime, and hopefully it'll be another month before I flip them over, because I know the longer I go now, potatoes are forming in those bags, and the longer I go, the more potatoes I'll get. But that's probably what's happening, is they're on their way go dormant, and you'll be harvesting them soon. And you can throw some of them back in the bag and just let them sit there, and sometime toward the end of the summer they'll flush back out and you can get a second round on them. That's a possibility. Let's see, somebody wants to know the dark shrubs or dark shrub that's behind me. Let's see, I'm guessing they're talking about the Japanese maple, the contorted Japanese maple I have back here. I got a Tamukiyama Japanese maple that I've contorted the trunk on. I've got another contorted Japanese maple that I'm working on that's in a container video from 2 days ago as you're watching this one. Yeah, two days ago. But that's a Tamukiyama Japanese maple. There's a Loropetalum right there that's dark. It's a dwarf Loropetalum, purple daydream. And then there's a barberry over here. So I don't know which of the dark foliage things you were thinking of, but it's probably that Tamukiyama Japanese maple that's back there. Which, again, that's another one that I've got in a bit of shade toward the end of the day, so it doesn't cook on me, and it stays pretty fresh back there. It's getting some good morning, early day, lots of direct sun, and then it's in the shade. After that, somebody wants to know if they can cut their canna lilies down to make them spread more, because they want to divide them. Maybe. It's probably not the best idea. You're probably best just letting them grow like they grow, letting them go dormant in the wintertime, and then letting them, when they come back up the next year, they tend to spread a little bit. At that time, you can dig them up and be cutting them. It probably would work to just mow them off sometime in the early summer, and then they'd have plenty of energy under the ground to then sucker from, underneath, and then you could divide those small suckers, but they would probably be a little bit energy starved. Taking that approach is rather drastic, but again, it'd probably be effective, but I'm not going to recommend it to anyone. I'm just going to say, let them just go through the natural process of going to sleep in the winter and coming back bigger, better, fuller, and you can divide them then. But it frequently does work on things just to, cut them off and, kind of force them into regrowing off their own roots. Okay. So somebody early spring planted a lady's mantle. Hosta was still asleep. Hosta's come up, and now they're crowding one another out. Is it okay to still move that lady's mantle? Yeah, if you planted it a few weeks ago or a couple months ago, absolutely. Pop it out of the ground, move it somewhere else. It won't even blink, probably. Okay. So somebody says their tomato has 2 leaders. Should they cut one back? This really comes down to whether or not you have... you can keep 2 liters would be okay, as long as you have somewhere to stake them. There are a couple different types of tomatoes. You have determinate varieties, which grow as little shrubs. And typically most of the fruit finishes all at one time. That's the kind of tomatoes like Roma is a determinate tomato. Those tend to finish all their fruit at once, and they're good for commercial growing because they can use a machine to pick all the tomatoes at once. And if they destroy the plants, it doesn't matter because they're not going to produce anymore anyway. Those can be grown as little bushes and shrubs, and as many liters as you have, it wouldn't matter. Most people are growing indeterminate tomatoes, vining, which are vining tomatoes. Those I just really want 1 liter on, and my tomatoes are up about this much. They should be a little taller already, but again, we've had really cool nights. But I do keep them as singles. You'll get a lot of suckering where you try to get, as the tomato grows, you'll get suckers that will come off and grow in different directions. And I desucker mine. You can find lots of videos on the internet for desuckering tomatoes. So, over the course of a season with indeterminate tomatoes, you're going to get lots and lots of leaders if you don't do some pruning on them during the season. And it's pretty easy just to go pop those little suckers out during the season. Okay, so somebody says, are they working on different color Mahonia flowers? Most all Mahonia has yellow flowers. It's really an interesting group of plants because they're in the barberry family, and if you see barberries bloom, most all the barberry flowers are yellow as well, and then almost all the Mahonia varieties are yellow. I do know there's a reddish species out there. I don't know if anybody's worked with it to try to change, to mix and change the colors, but pretty much I've only ever seen yellow. Where we're really working on Mahonia is interesting foliage. I actually have a few that I saw last year, and I tagged them for the Southern Living Plant Collection to take a look at, that have beautiful purple foliage and pink and really interesting things in Mahonias to come, and hopefully some sterile cultivars as well, because some of them can be a bit seedy. But that Mahonias are in the barberry family. And again, they have yellow flowers. I have epimedium, which I have in this garden. That's in the barberry family. Those do come in a few different colors, but there are a lot of yellows in that as well. Mayapple is in the barberry family, and I have the Chinese mayapple and our native mayapple back here in the back, along the fence line back there. I can't even think of. There's some other things too in that barberry family, but a lot of them are yellow. Mayapples are like a white or off-white color typically. The flower's kind of hidden up underneath of a big leaf. But interesting family of plants, and lots of people are always working on Mahonia, and there are some interesting varieties coming. Okay, somebody planted bare root trees, and some of them appear to be dead, and the ones that aren't dead have the foliage is actually coming from below the graft, meaning right at the ground. It's a different tree it's grafted onto. Number one, you have to cut that material back from below the graft for sure. I wouldn't give that any energy or time. If nothing is coming from above the graft at this point, I don't know where you live in the country. So if you're asking me this question and you're in Maine or Michigan, there's obviously some possibility that they're definitely alive. If you're asking me this question and you're in Georgia, I would think your fruit plants should have definitely leafed out a long time ago. And so I don't know where you are in the country, but you can, scratch the stems on the part above the graft that, should be alive, and it should be some green underneath the bark. If there is, and they're still a little bit flexible, you can give them a few more weeks. But again, anything down below that graft, you want to cut it off, get rid of it quickly. So somebody asked, topsoil is the least expensive thing at the box store when they go and are looking to buy things. Is it okay to use some of that and just mix in some compost and other things to add to beds? Sure. I don't know what company it is. I don't know what material. I don't know where the topsoil came from. I've said this before. Topsoil could just be scraped off a farm field. It could be really bad soil, and they've mixed a little compost or bark into it just to kind of keep it fluffy for the process of you buying it in the bag. So I honestly don't know what the quality of it is. But if it seemed like halfway decent material and you wanted to mix a little compost in it and then use it to bulk up, a raised bed or something like that, I think you'd be perfectly fine doing that. Again, I don't know what the material is. You can. There are reviews on everything on the internet. So, if you see that brand when you go back to Depot or Lowe's or Walmart or wherever it was, you can definitely look it up and see if there's any reviews on it, if anybody's used it. I mean, it's possible. So within the realm of possibility, you'll see a review like, I used this topsoil and a million weeds immediately were all over my beds. And then you'll know it's full of weed seed or something like that. You could prevent yourself from some trouble maybe, but if it's overall generally decent reviews, yeah, go for it. Okay, so somebody asked, they've got a weed called Virginia copperleaf that's come up in their in their garden. Acalpha rambodia, I think is what it is. It used to be Acalphia virginica. I think it's one of those renamed species. It's a native it's a native plant that's, you know, but we're going to call it a weed. He's calling it a weed. I'm going to call it a weed because if any plant that's in your garden that you don't want is a weed to you, right? That's how we define weeds. Do you want it there or not want it there? If you don't want it there, it's a weed. And that could include a shrub you planted that decided to move over there. That now is a weed in your garden. So it's come up really quickly. You had zinnias in that spot last year, and now it's just seeing it's just taken over. You know, this is a weed that comes up in disturbances, and so there are a lot of weeds like this that just are disturbance-based weeds. You flip the soil over for any length of time, they're the first thing that germinate. Something has to cover the ground really quickly. Nature has designed itself to not allow bare soil. So if you had some period of time where the zinnias were done in the winter and that spot stayed kind of bare or was disturbed by pulling them out or something like that, that's where you're going to get a weed like this, and it's going to be really aggressive in covering the space. Once you get it removed and get whatever summer annuals you want in there, make sure you're putting some bark or something over the top of that soil to keep the sun from getting back on it. Get control of it and then put a cap on it. And that's why in the 7 steps to maintaining annuals video that I put up this week, I put this bark down because these annual plantings are a disturbance, okay? I disturbed the soil, and when I disturb the soil, I bring up weed seeds, and nature goes into overdrive when the ground gets disturbed. It wants to, I mean, everything races to be the first thing, right? To be up. I can get myself up, I can get myself into the sun first, I can make seed first, I can lay my seed down, and then whatever happens after that, grasses, weeds, shrubs, trees, whatever comes up after that, I will have made seed, which can lay here until we get another disturbance and I can come back up again. So that's the race that happens, right? And this is one of those weeds. It's one of the first things to the party every time. So again, put caps back on soil quickly that you disturb. That's the point of all those words. Okay, so somebody has a 20-year-old Encore azalea. Can they transplant it? Absolutely. I transplanted in the fall. And sometime between now and then, I would go cut the roots, leave it in place, don't pull it up, but cut the roots out at the drip line of the plant. So just go make a circle around it, take your shovel, stick it in the ground, break the roots, break the roots, break the roots, break the roots. Do that a couple times between now and the time you're gonna move it. And then it will kind of be trained into a smaller space. And then it will likely transplant easier and more successfully. Okay, so somebody had a crab apple eaten down by a deer, rabbit, something like that. They've got lots of new pieces coming. It's above the graph, so it's definitely the crab apple they wanted. Should they establish a new leader? Yeah, for sure. You want to pick one of those that's vigorous and get it staked up and get it as the new leader, and then eventually cut those other ones off. You may leave them for now just because you know, it's probably giving a little bit of energy to the plant. I'll let you make that decision, but I would establish a new leader because you don't want branching below this height or so. If you have branching down here, I mean, you're never going to be able to get close to that tree. It's going to be more of a shrub than a tree. So yeah, I would establish a new leader. Is my Everillo Carex in the full sun? This is the gold grass-like plant that's right here. And we've planted a few more this year. We've spotted them, a few more of them into the garden because I can never have enough gold, enough chartreuse plants out here. But the Everillo Carex, is it in the full sun? It's getting, I'm gonna say that by the time the sun comes over the house in the summertime, it's probably getting a good 6 hours of direct sun. So I think most people would consider that almost full sun. And then this tree back here is putting some shade on it. So it's probably getting more than the tag would tell you. But of course, this is relevant also to where you are. If I told you in Houston, could it take 6 hours of direct sun? Probably not. Likely not. So it would have to go in more shade there. It's already up to zone 5. So as you got towards zone 5, I would think that it could take full sun in all likelihood. If you're in Michigan zone 5, this plant's going to take full sun. By the time you get here, I may have it in a hair too much if it got really, really hot during the summertime, but it's been completely happy there thus far, and it's getting almost full sun, but it's getting a break late in the day. Okay, is it okay to limb up a red bud? Again, red buds are the top question, definitely the top question, and I will do a red bud video. I limbed this one up, and I limbed this thing up in a video It leafed out and it's already back on the ground again. This Golden Falls redbud, it grows so fast. It's grown this much. It's grown this much since it leafed out. 2 feet. I mean, I can see where it's grown 2 feet. It needs to be limbed up again. So yes, you can limb them up. I've got an old video on the channel from the old house, and it's actually a pruning video, but it's how to prune large limbs off of trees. So if you'll go to my channel main page and search in the videos for how to prune large limbs off trees, that tree was the tree that I pruned the large limbs off of. Was a large redbud. So if you want to go back and take a look at that, but yes, you can limb them up. It's not their favorite thing. It's not the plant that, you know, like volunteers to be shaped in different ways and, you know, those kinds of things. It's, but yes, you can. Okay. Should you wait? Okay. So I've talked about, you know, if you buy an azalea in full bloom or a hydrangea in full bloom, I wouldn't go stick that in the ground, because if you do, almost certainly you're going to shorten the length of time that thing's going to flower. It's going to go. That can be gardenias. It could be anything. If you buy it in full bloom, go stress it, putting it in the ground, you're going to see the flowers decline potentially, not always, but potentially very quickly. So enjoy it in the container, then put it in the ground. So somebody's bought some conifers and the conifers are in full flush. Does that same rule apply? It would apply if it was in the summertime and it was really hot. But if it's still cool in your area, I probably am not going to worry about conifers putting on growth, because they're always going to be putting on growth in the spring and in the fall. That's their time to grow. And so it would be hard to avoid, you know, putting a conifer in when it wasn't growing for most people. So the only time that would apply is if I bought one in July and it had a lot of growth on it, I might wait till fall to put it in, because it would be more stressful. But I think in the spring, while it's still cool nights, or the fall, it wouldn't be a problem on conifers. Somebody asked how to tell the difference between Liriope spicata and Liriope muscari. Liriope spicata is trying to eat your house and eat your neighbors and disappear your dog, while muscari is in a little clump. And you know, you can tell the 3 clumps on this carex back here. Okay, they're different group of plants, but you know, you can see it's a clump. The clump gets slightly larger each year. That's what Liriope muscari does. Liriope spicata goes to sleep and then spreads by underground rhizome and comes up. And I've seen it go under sidewalks, all the way across the sidewalk, come up on the other side. Just wild how aggressive that plant can be, and really hard to get rid of. One of the most difficult things to get rid of. It's like, it laughs at Roundup. You spray glyphosate on it. I think it eats glyphosate. So, you know, it's really, really hard to get rid of if you ever have it. So if you do think you have it, I'd get rid of it as quick as possible. And one of their clues was it's sending up shoots everywhere. That's definitely Liriope spicata. Muscari just stays as a clump. And look at that when you're buying Liriope. You know, it should look like it's in a little. Here's another carex. Okay, so this is another carex. I should be able to pull this whole clump up like this and not see any other pieces coming up along the edge of the container. It's only the clump, right? That's how Liriope muscari grows. And that's what it should look like. If you see pieces coming out of the bottom of the container or out on the edges of the container on your Liriope, walk away from it. You don't want it, unless you were trying to cover a really steep slope and, you know, which would then be a lot of maintenance, weeding and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't recommend that either, but you know, it would hold a bank in place. Somebody asked me about, I've avoided this question probably for a little while, just in turn, you know, they asked me about using mulch over cardboard. Is there a technique for putting in new beds and what my opinion of it is? I don't do it, okay? I see it all the time, and I certainly support any person's engagement into gardening. If that's the way you're going to put in new beds and it gets you started and it makes you happy, then go for it. It's not a long-term issue at all, but there is a short-term issue of creating a dry socket between your actual living soil and your mulch on top. I mean, the purpose of all of this is to improve the soil. And the best way to do that is to add organic material onto your soil. If you're adding your organic material on top of a cardboard box, there's a period of time it's going to take for that box to break down. Plus it creates a dry socket between the two has been my thing. But again, another thing people might have is very difficult weeds. So if you're trying to kill Bermuda and you don't want to spray anything, you're trying to kill Liriope spicata and you don't want to hurt anything, then laying down those boxes would probably be beneficial in the short term, and certainly better than laying down plastic or anything like that. So again, it's not me criticizing it, it's just me saying that it's definitely better to amend your soil directly and get this, the process of these mycorrhizal fungi and other beneficial fungi, beneficial bacteria eating the mulch and compost that you're putting down directly, getting the earthworms to be able to move up and down out of that material, that organic material that you're putting on top and your soil down below. That stopped for a little while until that cardboard breaks down some. Again, tens of thousands of people do this technique and it works just fine for them. They have no problem with it. Cardboard boxes break down, everything's fine. This is not Jim's opinion is the only opinion kind of channel or anything like that. So you do what you want to do. And if it's worked for you in the past, absolutely go for it. I'm just telling you that there is a period of time where you're not improving your soil for sure by having a barrier between your mulch and the earth. But if you have something difficult that you need to kill, certainly, lay something on top of it. I've killed this little bit of grass that was here in the process of doing projects over the last couple months because I haven't cared about it anymore because it's going to be a project. I'm starting Monday out here. And so, laying stuff on it will kill it pretty quick. Okay, let's see. So somebody asked my go-to native shrubs and perennials for pollinators. Almost all of our native perennials, grasses and shrubs are going to be good for our native pollinators. As long as it's a flowering thing, it doesn't really matter. Whatever you're drawn to. I will say our shrub list is a little thin. If I go, what are your go-to native shrubs for pollinators? I'm going to get the same list of 10 to 20 from every single person I ask. But when it comes down to perennials, herbaceous perennials that die to the ground and come back, and grasses, oh my gosh, we have so many great plants. Just right here behind me, I've got bee balm, I've got liatris, I've got agastache, I've got a couple salvia varieties over here that are native to us, and then coneflower back here that's native, and upright phlox that's native. Gosh, I could probably stand here a little while longer and do this, all the native. So, and when I was over in Europe, that was even reinforced more because every botanic garden I went to, all the herbaceous perennials, not all, but a good portion of the herbaceous perennials that were in those gardens were North American natives, which was kind of exciting to see. That's where we truly have an incredible list of things that we can add to our gardens that are natives. Again, and then trees as well. We have such great shade trees across North America for sure. But again, our shrubs, and I do have a lot of native shrubs out here, but that list is pretty short for great ornamental flowering shrubs for our gardens. If I'd have to expand the area of what I considered native way outside of North Carolina, in order to have a big list of woody shrubs for that purpose. I'm going to take some flack for that, but it's true. All of you are going to come up with Itea and Clethra and beautyberries and the same list from literally everyone, and a couple viburnum, and same list. Okay, let's see. Suggestions on plant labels. So you can use any plastic material. So you can take an old plastic blinds that you have in your house, an old set of plastic blinds, and cut those up. You can use any kind of plastic. You can cut up milk or plastic bottles that you drank a Pepsi out of or something like that. Any of those plastic materials will work for labeling. The main thing with labeling plants is that you're using a pen that is doesn't break down in the sunlight and doesn't wash off. So make sure it's a nursery marker of some kind. You can buy them on Amazon. But you definitely want to use some sort of nursery marker, or some people use crayon because that doesn't wash off as easily. So, that it's more the thing you're using to write on it than the actual plastic. Almost any plastic will hold up. It's just the writing will fade over time. And then write them down in a book too. So, you know, not just out in the garden, but you have it written down somewhere else too, because inevitably you'll lose tags in the garden somehow or another. 7A replaced. Okay, so somebody's in zone 7A. They had 6 Indian hawthorns killed by the December freeze, and they wanted to come back in with Indian hawthorns, and I think it was spring sonata they wanted to plant. Would I do that? No, definitely not. I would not plant Indian hawthorns in zone 7A probably ever. I know that they're all going to say hardy in zone 7 to 10. I've always said 7B to 10, and really even in zone 7B, the right winter will damage our Indian hawthorn. So I would pick a different low-growing evergreen shrub for that space in zone 7A, especially if they've already been killed once. You know, I would do that. It was back in the 80s, almost all the Indian hawthorns in Raleigh died. You know, and then it's a period of time before people start using them again, and then they just forgot about it. And then, you know, it's happened a couple other times too, where the Indian hawthorns have been badly damaged. I have 2 in this garden, but again, I'm in zone 7B and I'm near downtown Raleigh, so it's probably more like 8A, and mine haven't been damaged. I did cover those out there during the December freeze. If that, you know, helps you a bit, even here in 7B, 8A-ish, I covered mine. Okay, so last question for this week. Again, ask gardening questions down below. I might sometime this week go back and pick another 20 or so questions from those 2 videos and do another one of these, just because there were so many great questions that I know I'm skipping a bunch. So somebody asked my opinion about Master Gardeners or Master Gardener program. The Master Gardener program is fantastic, and I usually speak to a couple of those groups a year. About 2 months ago, I spoke at the Davidson County Master Gardeners just on some interesting plants that I like. And usually about 2 times a year, I get a lot of requests from Master Gardener groups to speak, and I usually will pick like 2 a year to speak at. It's a great program. It's nice to have motivated people who are helping each other garden and then helping other people, answering questions for others as well. The Master Gardener program, I think I don't remember where it started. It started out in Washington State, but I don't remember what year. And then North Carolina State University runs our extension program here in North Carolina, and there's 100 counties. Each county has an extension agent, and the extension agent runs the Master Gardener program. So every county has a Master Gardener program. They take 40 hours of classes, maybe it's more than that, and then they take some sort of test. At the end, the person want to know if I'm a Master Gardener. No, I am a North Carolina certified landscape contractor, and the contractor exam has a similar test as one of the 3 components, and then it has a plant ID test, and then it has a plan reading component to it. So I took a similar test, oh my gosh, 28 years ago or something like that. But again, I love the program. All the people that I meet in those groups are fantastic. Again, it's just nice to have a group of people who are motivated enough to learn something, and then they're able to help others in the community. And so it's just a small little army of people who can answer some gardening questions for folks, which is nice. I love how the extension agent program works and operates. I hope it will always continue to be funded throughout the country. It gives you guys it gives everybody an opportunity. If you have fruit related questions, having a county-based group of experts be able to answer some of those questions that might relate to how a peach tree grows in the mountains versus how a peach tree would grow down at the coast. In the different times of year you would do such and such on grapevines or whatever the heck it is. Or, when you would divide things, when you'd plant things. It's great to have a group that's right there in your community. Thank you guys for watching. Ask gardening questions down below, and I'll answer those, pick from those next week. Thanks for watching.